Let's take a look at a couple of parallelogram examples for us. So what we want to do here is we want to figure out in this problem the unknown angle measures, the values of x and y that are going to make this a parallelogram. So let's start with how do I find out the angle measures? And that should be it. Letter D, this is parallelogram A, B, C, and D. Well, starters, we got to know our properties. So we know that opposite angles in a parallelogram, those are going to be congruent. Those have the same measures. So I know that angle D and angle B have the same measure. But if you look at my letters, my variables are different. I cannot solve for that. So that's not going to help us here. But I do know that consecutive angles, those are going to be supplementary. And remember, supplementary means they add to 180 degrees. Now I can work with that because what I have is I have two sets of consecutive angles here, angle AD and angle B and C, that both have one variable that I can solve for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this property to help us solve for that x, to help us solve for that y. So I'm going to start with solve for x. All right, to do that, I'm going to use my property that the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle D, since those are consecutive, add to 180 degrees. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute the expressions for those. So I'll have 3 4x minus 5 degrees plus x equals 180. From there, I can distribute and combine like terms and solve for both for the x value. So I'm going to distribute that 3 into the 4x minus 5. That's going to give me 3 times 4x, which is 12x. 3 times negative 5 is minus 15 plus x equals 180. At that point, it's appropriate to combine your like terms. So I have my 12x and my x, which is going to give me 13x minus 15 equals 180. And now I can solve. So to add that 15 on both sides, and then you're going to get 13x equals 195. Use your calculator to do the rest if you need to. 195 divided by 13. And that's going to get you, plug that into my calculator, I get 15 for x. So I have the value of x. That's we're asked to get x and y. So now I'm going to go over to y and do the same thing. For y, I can do angle B and C add to 180. So the measure of angle B plus the measure of angle C. Those add to 180 because consecutive angles add to 180. They are supplementary. Let me spell the rest of that out. So I'll substitute again. Once you see if you can pause the video and try that one on your own. See if you can solve for that for y, and then we'll go back and plug them all in. All right, hopefully you had a chance to try this on your own. Angle B is going to be y minus 6 plus 5 parentheses y plus 12 is equal to 180. I'm going to go over here and distribute. I don't need those parentheses anymore around the y minus 6, but I will distribute that 5 into the y plus 12. And I'm going to get y minus 6 plus 5y. 5 times 12 is 60 equals 180. From there, it looks like I combine some like terms. The y and the 5y will add to 6y, so I have 6y. The minus 6 and the 60, well, that's going to add to 54. It's like 60 minus 6. And then from there, I can do the rest by solving. So I'm going to take that 54 away from 180. And that's going to be 180 minus 54, 126. So 6y is equal to 126. And then finally, divide by 6 on both sides. And 126 divided by 6 is 21. Now, you're not usually done solving when you have the variables. You have to go back and plug them in. So it says find the unknown angle measures. Well, that would be, what is the measure of angle A? What is the measure of angle B? And so forth. Well, that's you're going to get by plugging in. So we're going to go through and plug all the variables in to get the angles. So the measure of angle A, that's going to be 3 times for, we have the value of x. X is 15, so we're going to substitute that in. And that's going to be 3 times 60 minus 5, so 3 times 55. And 3 times 55 is going to give you 150, 175, or 165, excuse me. So the measure of angle A is 165 degrees. I get the other angles in a similar manner, although you can find shortcuts around some of them. For instance, I know these two add to 180, so I could simply say angle D is going to be 180 minus 65. But if you notice, x is 15, and the measure of angle D is just x. So measure of angle D will just be 15 degrees. And what do you notice? Those two add to 180. So consecutive angles are supplementary. We can go through the opposite side and do the same thing. Angle B is going to be y minus 6. So since I know y is 21, the measure of angle B is 21 minus 6. But wouldn't you know it, 21 minus 6 is 15 degrees. And 15 degrees is the same as this angle D because these are opposite angles. And opposite angles are congruent. So that should be 15 degrees. So can you think about what angle C is without even doing any extra work? Yeah, it's going to be the opposite of angle A. So angle C and angle A have the same measure. Angle C is going to be 165. Now let's plug that in and prove it. The measure of angle C is equal to 5 times 21 plus 12. And 21 plus 12 is 33. 5 times 33. Well, that's going to actually, if you use your calculator, that's going to give you 165 degrees. So we have all four angles, 15, 165, 165, 15, and we have the values of x and y. We have solved this problem. So in this example, you could try it on your own. It's another angle problem. So I would say just kind of pause this video and see what you can do with this one. Once you've undone the pause, you've tried it on, you can check the answers and see how you did. All right, folks. Well, let's see. What do we have here? We have two sets of angles again. This is another parallelogram. So we want to find the values of x and y that make that a parallelogram. If I look at angle A and angle B, now those are consecutive. They have different letters. They have different variables. So I can't really solve for x and y in that type of equation. So I have to look in the opposite side and notice that those both have just an x. So I know that the opposite angles are congruent. That means they're equal in measure, okay? I'm going to use that property to solve for x. So I'm going to say the measure of angle A equals the measure of angle D. And then I can set up two equations, or yeah, two equations, but I'll start with the first one. 2 parentheses 3x minus 8, we'll substitute in for angle A. And for D, it looks like it's going to be 5x plus 2. Now, I'm not going to use any parentheses around that because there's nothing being distributed. All right, in this problem here, I have a 2 I can distribute to the left side, so that's going to become 6x minus 16 equals 5x plus 2. All right, on both sides of the equation, I can't combine any like terms, so at this point, I'm going to get the x's to one side. Looks like I want to subtract the 5x from both sides to make that easy. So 6x minus 5x is going to give us 1x. Those cancel out. Then I can add the 16 to both sides to get rid of that number. And so my value of x in this case is going to be just 2 plus 16, which is 18. Those cancel out too. So now I have the value of x. Similarly, I'm going to go through and get the value of y because I can look at these opposite angles and set those equal to each other. So I can say the measure of angle B equals the measure of angle C. Now, quick note, when we're naming angles, we should actually have the appropriate letters in the right order. We never want to do A, B, and then D, C. So that's actually mislabeled. And I should have caught that before I made the video, but I want to let you know that we should really think about this being C and that D if we're labeling this correctly, okay? That's an oversight on my end. I'm not going to go through and change it now, but let's go ahead and set those equal to each other. So 3y plus 16 and 4 parentheses y minus 2. All right, so what we're going to do here is distribute that 4, and that's going to give you 4y minus 8. And then over the left side, I just have 3y plus 16. That doesn't change. From there, I want to get the y's to one side. It's probably appropriate in this case to subtract the 3y from both sides, even though it's on the left side, because I can get a positive y. So those will cancel those out. Then I'll have 16 equals y minus 8. After that, I can add the 8 to both sides. So 16 plus 8, that's going to give you 24 equals y. Now I have the value of y solved. I have the value of x solved. I can go back and I can plug in to find the unknown angle measures. So if you think you can get that, you can go ahead and pause the video and then try to plug those in, get those angle measures, and you can check with me after you've done so. Well, let's start with angle A. The measure of angle A is going to be 2 times 3, and then what's the value of x? X is 18, so I'm going to plug in 18. 3 times 18 minus 8. So using a little bit of a calculator, I'm going to get 3 times 18 is 54. So 2 times 54 minus 8. 54 minus 8 is going to be 46. So 2 times 46. And 2 times 46 is going to be 92. So the measure of angle A is 92 degrees. 92. And then I can go to the opposite side, and that should be also 92 degrees. Opposite angles should be congruent. So let's double check that. Angle D is 5x plus 2. 5 times, again, x is 18. So 5 times 18 plus 2. 5 times 18 is 90. 90 plus 2 is 92. So that checks. So the measure of angle D is also 92. Measure of angle A is 92. Now we can get angle B and C. Those are opposite, so I can go back and plug 24 in. So if I find the measure of angle B, that's going to be 3 times 24 plus 16. Well, 3 times 24 plus 72 plus 16 is 88. So 72 plus 16, 88, not 188, 88. And without doing any extra work, I could tell you that angle C is also going to be 88, since it's an opposite of angle B. But I can verify by plugging in 24. So it's going to be 4 parentheses 24 minus 2. 4 times 22, which is going to be 88. So that does check. And if you notice that I could also get the 88 by doing 180 minus the consecutive angle. I could take that 92 and subtract it from 180. And that's going to also give me 88. So there's a couple different ways to get all the extra angles once you have your variables. But let's go ahead and circle everything. We have all the variables. We have all the angle measures. Hope these problems were helpful for you. The next videos will go over some other types of parallelogram properties.